I'm sorry if you missed me. I did the whole battle axe thing because I've been doing weapons tonight. And tonight I'll speak about the weapons that I have on at the current moment in time. Everybody in Scotland would carry one of these. This is a Dirk, D-I-R-K, not a duck, not quack quack, but a Dirk, D-I-R-K. Now, these became almost magical in Scottish history. They were passed down from father to son. People in Scotland still take an oath on one of these. I have seen people in the last year take an oath and kiss their Dirk, because he who lies by the Dirk dies by the Dirk. That was the way it was always seen in Scotland. It's a strange shape for a knife, this sort of pointed style. But we used to make them out of broken swords. Generally swords that had been broken in battle, you would get two of these out of one. So as I say, they were almost magical. They were a weapon, but also they were used to cut your meat at fire, because the MacDonald Lords of the Isles hadn't moved over here and opened the burger chain just yet. So we didn't have the plastic cutlery, so we used one of these to cut meat at fire. It's sharp down one side, half sharp on the other, and has a bit here to give you a bit of leverage. It has grooves let into the side, because believe it or not, human flesh is actually rather sticky, and when you get it between someone's ribs, it used to stick. But they found that they put these grooves into the side, like you see on a lot of modern knives. It means that a vacuum is not created and it goes, and it comes out nice and clean. You know, if it's stuck between some English, I mean your enemy's ribs, you know. You don't want to get the jigsaw messy trying to get it out. Now, the handle is all carbon and Celtic knotwork, but it does look like a thistle. It does look like a thistle, that's the general idea. And you can use this end for a bit of attitude adjustment. That's basically what we used them for. Now, there were three weapons that we associate with the Highlands of Scotland. One of the other ones of the three is the basket-hilted broadsword, of which this is an example from about 1740. As you can see, it's reasonably flexible. It has a double edge. Broadswords have a double edge. A backsword has a single edge, and it would mostly be used on horseback. Now, to all intents and purposes, it's just an ordinary sword, but we added this basket to protect our hands, because the Scots like to fight barehanded. The basket, of course, you can punch with at close combat. You can use the nut for close combat too, and the basket can be used for lots of other things. If you catch another man's sword, obviously I don't have someone else here to fight with, but if you catch another man's sword, it actually slides down there and you can force him down. So the basket has many uses, or you can snap his weapon. Nearly all the grips in these are sharp skin, because leather or wood would get extremely slippy if it was covered in sweat or blood. So shark skin, I know that people think sharks are smooth, but actually if a shark swims by you and skims you, it'll take off a couple of pounds of flesh. And so we use shark skin grips because you didn't want to let go of your sword no matter what. The third part of the trio is this gentleman here, which we call the Targe, T-A-R-G-E, which is the Gaelic word for target, not because you wanted to be one. It was just this shape at one time was called the target. Inside this there are three discs of wood turned against the grain, which makes it incredibly tough. There's deerskin on the back, and as you can see again, we would carve our weapons with Celtic knotwork. The studs help to deflect sword and knife blows as well. Now I called this a weapon and not a shield, and although it's just big enough to cover the vitals of your body, it really is a shield in some respects, but in more ways it's a weapon of attack. This spike goes in the middle when it looks like there's going to be trouble. You take your Dirk, which you would use for cutting meat at fire, and it goes in there with the strap, and you grip the two together. The reason being is just common sense. If you lose control of your sword, you have a weapon that you can take right away. So the Dirk goes in there, you have the spike here. I'm left-handed, and so I carry my sword in my left hand. Now these three weapons constituted the three weapons of the Highland charge, the Great Highland Charge. You would hold this here as you went in to charge into your enemy. If one of the enemy was running into you, all you needed to do was lift and let him impale himself. As you're defending yourself and swinging with this, obviously you're hoping that one of these spikes will catch in the orbit of the eye in someone's mouth in their clothing, where you can force them down and use your sword. This sword is basically a slash and cut weapon. In Scotland we weren't much into this. It just didn't suit the temperament. It's a battle weapon, it's not a stabbing weapon. Now to give you an idea how effective these three weapons were, at the Battle of Prestonpans in 1745, in 1745 is a mere blink of an eye ago in Scotland, there was 2,500 Highlanders dressed like this, armed like this, against 2,500 redcoats. The redcoats were trained troops, had fought in all these continental wars. The Highlanders were basically just farmers who had got their weapons out of the thatch of their cottages. A cannon was fired, and it hit one of Clan Macintosh in the legs, and his legs sort of shot off into the distance, and he said ouch or something like that, and the Scots just charged. The battle was over in 2.5 minutes, and in that 2.5 minutes we had killed a terribly maimed 1,800 of the 2,500 redcoats. We lost 30 in comparison. So the Highland charge was basically pretty ferocious. Now a wee light went on some Englishman's head down south, and he thought, we need to harness this power. And that's when the pipes were outlawed, our kilts were outlawed, our weapons were outlawed, but we were told that we could keep our weapons and our kilts, our bagpipes, weapons of war, if we joined the British Army and fought to colour the map of the world pinky red. And so many Scots didn't want to give up their way of life, their dress and their weapons, their bagpipes. And so they fought, and they coloured the map of the world pinky red. New Zealand, Australia, India, Rhodesia, South Africa, even Canada for some reason still pinky red. You were sensible, and you had been sort of deported about 200 odd years ago. But so these weapons coloured the map of the world pinky red, and there was a saying that they said all over the planet, and I used to hear it when I was a boy, and they said that the sun never sets in the British Empire because the sun is always shining somewhere pinky red. Well, let me explain that statement to you. The sun never sets in the British Empire, ladies and gentlemen, because God doesn't trust the English in the dark, okay? And I don't want to... Now you see the drawbacks to weapons like this in the film Rob Roy with Liam Neeson, and I'm sure most of you with Scots blood have seen Rob Roy, the movie, at one time or another. It actually depicts a year out of Rob Roy's life in reality pretty accurately. Now you see the drawback in this weapon when he was up against a swordsman, because this is really a battle sword, a slash and cut sword. But one of my friends went to see Rob Roy the night before me, and I met him in the street, and I said, what did you do last night? He said, I went to see Rob Roy with Liam Neeson. I said, was it good? He said, oh, it was great. He said, it was all about being true to yourself as a Scotsman, it was all about honour. And of course I was interested because Liam Neeson isn't Scottish, of course. So I said, tell me, I said, how was Liam Neeson's Scottish accent? And he said, he says, it was absolutely fantastic. He said, it was just exactly the same as it was in Schindler's List. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're more or less ready for the next band. They're still setting up. But we've still got a good night ahead with the Kildares and then Albanac, who will bring you some of the authentic sound that goes with these weapons, the way they used to be played before, during and after battle. And thanks for listening to me. I'll catch you all again later. Thank you.